Hi, my name is Benedict. This is round 2 in the Simple Songwriting series. Yes, it iterates. Last time, I walked through a song right from the beginning using just MIDI. Now, I know that for some people it wasn't the kind of sound that they were hoping to get. So I thought I'll have another go. We'll build another song. Only this time I'll focus a little bit more as though it were not an electronic song. I know everybody's very focused and they think, well, I can only learn something that's exactly my genre. Please, please, please do not be like this, because that becomes a real liability for you. Be super open-minded. I kept trying to hammer that through with the first series, and I will no doubt continue to do that here as well, like a broken record. So let me show you where we're heading in this lesson. Different sound, more vibrant in a sense. Last time I thought about using some of the devices that I'm going to show you here, but I figured I wouldn't, because they add a layer of complexity. They do add a layer of coolness to the results, but they also add a layer of complexity to you, the creator. But I know that you, the creator, probably want that complexity right from the get-go. Just rearrange my lumberjack shirt. So, first thing we'll do is we will mute and move out of the way the things that we don't need to start with. We need to choose where we're starting from. I talked last time about how people often seem to want to start from the drums. Not the wisest idea. Again, I'm going to say, let's start from a chord progression, because it gives us the greatest amount of control. But the chord progression and the way we work it this time is going to be different from what we did last time, because this time we're kind of at least beginning with the idea of an acoustic guitar driven track. So what we're using here is this fella here. The acoustic guitar from Ample Guitar. It's I think it's a Maton, from Ample Sound. Now this is a freebie. You can go to their sound or to the Ample VST site, or you can go off to free VST or VST4free.com. I've got some stuff over there, and find this. It's pretty easy. Just Google Ample Guitar and you will find this. It's kind of everywhere. When you first open it, I admit it is going to seem obtuse. And this is one of the things that I had a problem with. Now, in many ways, you'll get, better when we're focused, what you expect. But then you'll be like, how do I play it? Now, if you're going to put in your notes, great. Oh, sounds like Stairway to Heaven. Better not get sued. But this is more about the strumming thing, and I will be very honest to say that it took me a bit to get my head around this. Mostly the difficulty is in assumptions, because it completely changes the way this thing performs. So you see that this and all its key commands and what have you look one way, and then when you move into strumming mode, as in we turn this on, it now all looks completely different. It behaves differently. That is something that took me a bit to get my head around. There's a reason behind this. It covers a lot of ground, stuff that's just intuitively done by struminators. Guitarists do this without realizing how complex it is. But when you try to put it down into a GUI, especially in one window, it gets complex. But this time we're going to use the strummer. The strummer, I'm not going to pretend to give you all the rules on how this thing works. It's clever. But suffice it to say, we've got three main parts to make up our sequences of playing of chords. So we can choose what chord we want in which position. So we've got position 1 through 24. 24 is probably excessive for the moment. We're just going to go with 4. You've then got how the thing actually plays at any given step in time, which it can strum. So that's a downstroke from the bass to the treble strings, upstrokes from treble to the bass strings, mutes, variants on mutes. They're basically all the main things as to how a guitar gets strummed. So we would then put in, these are not notes. These are just saying, okay, I want to call this articulation, this type of strumming here. So let's call down, up, down, and then let's call a couple of mutes, an open mute, and then a closed mute. That's just playing the same chord. Changing chord. So all it's doing is just stop. It's just playing the same pattern over different chords. Now we can set our chords up to be whatever we want them to be, and that will be your inversions and what have you as well. I'll let you get into that. You need to know a little bit about music theory to understand that, but there is nothing wrong with you going, well, look, I'll try that and see how it sounds. You can do this. So if you're not sure what you're doing, it is fine. It really is fine. I changed patterns here. That's why it sounded different. So I know, because I'm pressing play there. I shouldn't be pressing play there. So as you see, there's nothing to stop you from going through and choosing any chords, and you can choose them just by, oh, this is how it feels. Nothing wrong with that at all. Obviously, the more you know about theory, the more likely it is to be coherent, but nonetheless, something that's unique is still going to work, even if it's an odd thing. Sometimes odd is exactly why something sounds so interesting. Just don't focus too much on trying to be too odd. And then through the front end, we can call on which pattern that we want. So pattern being this bit here, and then calling the chords that we are playing. And that is done through, firstly, asking it to play the sequence, and then asking it which chord slot we want to play. So it's a little bit of but for the main thing, just understand how you're going to approach this in your sequencer, which is we're going to use a middle C note to make it start playing, and one of these lower notes to call which chord slot we're going to want to have playing, and then we use one of the higher notes here to choose which sequence slot we have playing. Little bit brain breaking until you suddenly have your aha moment and go, that's how it works. So it looks an awful lot like this. When you look at the performance or the MIDI here, it doesn't look like much. It's not actually playing the notes because the VST here is playing the notes for us. So by watching how the pair of these change, we can go through it again and see it here. It's changed here. It's changed here and here. That sense of patterns is how guitars work. They work on creating patterns out of various articulations, which is these guys. And this won't give you all the feel of a real guitarist, but it's close enough, especially if you use your humanization options a little bit here. Don't overdo it, but use them a little bit, and that will give you a little bit more sense of movement. But don't pretend that we're actually replacing Eric Clapton here, because we're not. But it will give us a very workable result. So now, as you hear, we've got this nice chord progression. Just understand that these notes are not actually notes. All they are is triggers for what's happening inside the plugin. Now, what I then did was took this to the bass, because that's where we need to really start working with our own notes and be in control of them. Because remember, anything you're not in control of controls you, and then you lose control. You want to be as much in control of things as you can. So by being inside here and looking at this, we know that when we're here, it's a C chord. We know that we move to the next one, it's going to be an A chord. Then it's going to be a D. And an F. So, if we look here, we will see that our bass is playing C, A, D, F. A couple little incidental notes, but that's what it's doing. So that's beginning to lay out our chord structure in some notes, MIDI notes. The more you have these, the more you're in control, as I said before. For that, I have used this wee fella. Same people, Ample. It's the bass, based on a Fender Precision bass, probably the single most famous bass in the history of electric instruments. It was designed as such to sound like a upright bass. Of course it doesn't, but it's a beaut sound, really beaut sound, and quite a versatile instrument. You can get everything from really smooth, download jazz, reggae dub. Steve Harris of Iron Maiden plays one of these, and it's clang, 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 clang. That galloping thing is done still with a precision. So don't feel like they're a limited sound. It's what you do with it that counts with these guys. Again, it gives you this interface. Obviously, you don't have access to all the notes in the world, simply because, as you see, there just aren't any more on the instrument. So it's wisely not offering us any more than we've got. You will notice that the bass positions are not necessarily in a straight line. We've started with a C, but if I try and play this C here, we ain't got nothing, simply because the instrument doesn't play down there. We can pretend we have some kind of drop tuning, but don't get into that until you understand what drop tuning is. So if we decided that our piece is in C major, which I think our piece is, then, and you're starting with your C, then your C is actually going to be up here, simply because it's the first C that's available. See, there's your low E, but believe me, it's still bassy enough. So, stop. Where is it? Okay, there we go. Now, last time we ended up with a slightly complex bass line. Here I wanted this to be super, super simple. It is possible to write a bass line which is just going to be and that is legitimate. And there are very good reasons to do that. But we also want a little bit of rhythmic variation in here. Otherwise, if everything is all appearing, it's going to be kind of on the dull side. So we've put these leading notes in, which see us move this one here actually gives emphasis to here. We could even lower the volume of these a little bit, which is not at all uncommon. So we lower these just a little bit. Hear how that throws the emphasis onto the real note. In terms of what these extra notes are, again, if you know your theory remotely, then you know that if we're in C, then our fifth, octave, fourth, third. So they're all parts of our chord. And because our next one is an A, but we don't have a note down there, we have to shift it up. I could have put this accent here or an octave up, which is here. Depending upon how you want the feel to go. Again, moving from an A to a D, so it's our C here, so D above. The E could go high. It all comes down to what we want it to do. You can also put them in the middle between these two notes that are and we might even have chosen to do something like this. Let's move that one there. I think it will sound better there. You just pop out of my way for now. But all of this has to work with our guitars, so let's check first. Yes, it does work nicely. Now here we've got a fair jump between a D and we're dropping to an A. No, it's an F. We could go high. Let's just try that. there's nothing wrong with that. It all depends on what we want our piece to do. You could even, let's just undo that and pop him down to here. This is an octave jump, in which case what's our note most in between? Let's try that for now. Or let's go the other way around. Let's drag this guy down. F, just showing you how versatile notes really are. And let's whack him up there. Let's go with a note. We were using a slightly different thing last time, so that comes out really nicely. I'm going to save that because that's different. We can make those little changes, and it's those little changes that are really going to create the feel of our piece far more than anything else. Don't fuss about sounds anywhere near as much as these little, how we've chosen to go from this place to that place. People think that creativity and uniqueness as a music is about making weird shit your business, but it's not really. You want to create something that's similar and approachable. This chord progression, similar and approachable. And it's how you transition, it's how you move, how you make things flow. That's where the magic's at. There is very little technical difference, really, between, say, Deep Purple Smoke on the Water and Hotel California from the Eagles and God is a DJ or Darude Sandstorm. Technically, there's very little difference. It's merely in how those things express. It would be possible to play all four of those songs on the one instrument and still actually deliver the song. They wouldn't sound the same, but they would still be those songs. So focus on the core there. So now we've got something that's really workable. We're working on the assumption that you've got a song, that you've got a lyric. Remember, I don't write lyrics, let alone sing anymore. But if you have a lyric, you're probably going to say, well, this is fitting in here. This is going nicely, it fits. If it doesn't, then you've got to look at, well, how are your rhythms different? Because your words will naturally have a rhythm. I Love You Baby has a rhythm. Maybe limited, but it has a rhythm. Welcome to the Hotel California has a rhythm. Went down to Santa Fe where Renoir paints the walls. It's the Angels. It has a rhythm. So with your words, find what the rhythm is, and obviously your guitars, if that's where you're going to start, which is a reasonable place to start, is going to express that rhythm. If you start with your bass, in this case, and avoid doing the whole thing, then that is going to be your rhythm. So there's nothing wrong with beginning to write things on a bass. There are plenty of people who do. Sting probably writes things on a bass. Next will be, let's go with a second acoustic guitar line. And this is our same friend, same instrument. With the last one, I chose the sound mono 1, and this one I've chosen the sound mono 2. Stereo will sound more exciting, but it's going to get a little harder to mix down the track. Not that it's not mixable, just going to get a little harder. Don't go with what sounds impressive now if it's going to cause you problems later. Similarly, the automatic faux double taking, which is putting one here and one there, kind of clever, but it is not going to replace two separate lines. Don't get Lazy. Lazy is very easy to pick up in a mix. Listen to the Doobie Brothers, the stuff where Michael McDonald comes in. Michael McDonald's far from lazy as a songwriter and arranger. And listen to, say, Minute by Minute or Long Train Running. And the level of detail in that is where a lot of the charm and the beauty comes from. It's easy to say, oh, it comes out of how great a singer Michael McDonald is or his use of a drum machine or whatever. But it's not. It's from the detail that he puts into the composing. So you can have a very simple piece, but if you put good detail in, it will seem far more detailed, obviously. It'll feel far better, far more advanced than if you've got like a stupidly complex chord, but no detail. Detail is everything. So avoid these and create a second line. Okay, really important. Unless you really know what you're doing, you are going to want these slots to have exactly the same chord, and until you know what you're doing, the same chord type as well. Technically, there's nothing wrong with C, where we've got a C major here, maybe of turning that into a seventh, but we could have some issues. Let's see what happens. Major. Not a real problem because it's just adding another note on top. But if we go to, I don't know, let's say an augmented. See, we've got some discomfort already because the notes used in one chord are not the same as the notes used in the other chord. So for safety's sake, if this says C major on one of your guitars, make sure it says C major on the other guitars as well. As you get more advanced in musical theory and chords and stuff like that, yes, you can do all kinds of kooky things. You can pile chords on top of each other and all kinds of stuff. But let's not get carried away. Focus on simplicity, and then it's how you augment and transition. And most importantly, your lyrics and how you sing them. That's going to be the thing that stands out. That's what we want to do. So we've now got... There are two schools of thought here. The one that has been super dominant over the last little while, especially in metal circles, has been that those guitars left and right have to be exactly the same. They have to be playing the same thing. They just have to be two separate performances so that they don't sound like one. Fair enough. I saw one guy saying you can't make them different performances, like you can't have different styles because then Fair enough, if you're trying to do an exact sound, yeah, fair enough, you need those strum sequences to be the same. However, it is not a hard and fast rule by any stretch of anybody's imagination who is sane. You'll hear here that the difference between these two performances, especially seeing they are the same guitar, we've got to make them different, gives us some character. We've got movement left and right. If we were to have these guys in the center, let's just center them. And they've disappeared. What did we do? What did we do? Nothing. Notice how we've still got value in our two performances. They're similar but different. If they were both exactly the same strum patterns, there would be no particular point in having them doubled. So by making them slightly different, we're creating interesting. If we are going to pan them out, as I have, note I'm not hard panning them. You can, but you'll see I often give reasons why, and when we get to the mix, we'll talk about that. This is giving us quite a rich palette, even though we've got very simple work. Remember? Detail. Let's put our bass back in. We'll stop for a moment and talk about the mix, so to speak. There it is. Sorry, I just find this so hard working with with one screen. I normally have the three. Everything's going into a reverb. I will strongly encourage right from the beginning, put a reverb there. It's hard to work without one. The room that you're working into defines what you do to some extent. So make sure there's a send. In terms of the mix, it's going to be very easy at this point to be trying to make the sounds perfect. Please do not do this. It will cause you a lot of wasted time and a lot of grief, because a lot of the decisions you make around, let's say, your bass, because I can hear people going, oh, but your bass isn't loud enough, Mom. A lot of the decisions you make around that bass will probably be turning out to be wrong once you get to your mix, especially if you don't know exactly where your piece is going. And if you've started this out thinking, this is going to sound exactly like Deicide's third record, the second track on the doubles on the B side, it's like, no, you're going in the wrong direction. You really are. Yes, you may be thinking, I like some things from that track, but are you going to duplicate them? No, because guess what? You are not Deicide. And that's good, because Deicide are Deicide and you are whoever you are. Find out who you are and let that come through what you do and the things that fail, but give you something that is your own. Remember the last piece that I did turned out completely differently from what I thought it might sound like. I thought I was going to do something similar to the record that's just about to come out, the Biffel record, which is shades of rockabilly and goth. Ended up with something like was Demis Roussos. I loved it. But if I had been so rigid and forced things to be something, I wouldn't have gotten that result. Whether you like the result doesn't matter. I think the result was very cool and showed me something that I can do that I didn't realize I can do. Whether I choose to do it or not another time doesn't matter. I know I can do that now. And that gives me a string to my bow. Don't go mixing everything like this. It's going to cause you nothing but troubles as you fill in your mix. Let your sounds stay fairly quiet. Yes, with what you've started working with, that'll be your rough mix for now. But as you bring in things like your bass and your drum, just keep them quiet. They're there only as such as placeholders in the mix as you work on the real music, which is the music. So once we've got this, this is the center of our track. That's our verse. Or as I said last time, we could copy and paste that 4 or 5 times, sing our thing across it, finish, done, releasable. Lacking in some detail and finesse, but it is workable. You can do that. Let's look at filling this out a little bit more. And because we're playing guitars, we will go to another guitar. This fella is not a freebie. but I bought it really cheap. I think it was $40 or something or other. So for a guitar VST, that is really cheap. The full versions of the stuff from Ample is $150, which is actually surprisingly cheap for their capability. I haven't downloaded demos of their electric guitars to see how they go, but now I'm starting to understand that acoustic one. They'd be roughly the same logic. They're rather cool. This little fella is limited, but it's a fairly straight boxing up of a set of electric guitar samples. Pretty good. The thing that I really like about it is its mute playing. It's designed predominantly to appeal sort of more for metal, and its ability to play mutes is nice. I like that about it. Befell, quite a few of the guitars use this guy. A lot of them are pure synths, and a few other bits and pieces, but this guy is central to quite a lot of pieces. I'm not saying go out and get it, because it's a little bit of a one-trick pony, but just explaining what it is and why it's in here. I thought, well, we've got two acoustic guitars. I'm not a massive fan of acoustic guitars, to be honest. They serve a wonderful purpose, and nothing against them. I've just always had a funny feeling of like, oh, too much strumming. So this is where we can, remember, use notes. This guy doesn't have, here, let me play this for you features. So by understanding our notes, we're now starting to make things work. Remember, we've still got that issue of a guitar doesn't play below E. These guys were kind. They gave us a drop C tuning, so D down to C. They're inauthentic, but we can use them if we want. But we know what our playing is, so we're going with... That's our C, A. Not nice. So remember, with a guitar, you've got to arrange things how they would be played. And while the note seems to be going up, it actually goes down, and that makes perfect sense. With our transition notes, I'm just working out, well, let's find something that's going to work nicely. So quite a few things will use some kind of performance feature, like in this case a sustain pedal, to turn our mutes on and off. Just see how this shape here matches this shape here. It took me a little bit to work out how to do that, but it switching between mutes and played out notes really helps give a sense of feel and movement to your performance, as does changing the level of some of these notes. I've got the first beat of the bar accentuated, so therefore a little louder. Obviously my ring out note is not as loud because open notes are louder naturally and they're longer, and then my final mute here. Seeing this is a supporting part, at least right now, because we've got our acoustic guitars, this electric guitar line is rhythmically a little different. It's a lot more nailed down, as in we're just playing the eighths. Playing sixteenths is probably a little much for a guitarist, but go for it. Just when it doesn't sound realistic, you might want to back away from it. Eighth note is pretty standard. Don't try to get all over the place with this, because you're going to end up with a funny sounding performance which is probably going to cause you difficulties. In this case, our rhythm guitar is just about creating a rhythm. That's all it's doing, is just nailing down time. So if we play these together, see how that sense of same but different between our three instruments is really creating quite a rich performance space. There's a lot of movement inside that. Oh, I hadn't made it clear, just working on assumption that a power chord is 1, 5. So 7 semitones up, or our fifth, which is a 1, 3, 5, so it's the top half of a chord. That's it. As long as that follows, just make sure you stay in key. In that if we move up, say 2 semitones here, we don't want to do that. We need to be doing that. But there will be times where that might be different, but nonetheless keep your what it would be if we played just a straight chord in that key. 3, 5, drop the 3. If you want it to be a fancier power chord, then you can put the octave in. But it tends to sound meaner just as a thing. That's it. Sound from this, I have done a little bit of work simply because this guy outputs. It's a nice sound, and we are listening to a speaker, is my understanding here. It is nice, but generally you're going to want to create a little bit of your own amping. So in this case, it's Blue Cat's free amp. They're very kind with this. You can use any similar thing that you like. Kavasa have one as well. I like this. I like the sound of Kavasa's amps. They are great, but this is really super cool. It gives you a classic clean, which is a sort of 50s, 60s type amp, a sort of 70s, 80s type amp, and then a modern thing, which is sort of 90s and on type amp. Very different sounds between all of them, so it's giving you these 3 different feels right out of the box. It is possible then to load a impulse response if that's the sort of thing that appeals to you. I realise I had totally forgotten to add one, so the wrong place. So let's go add one. Refills, these Telos ones, Tropicana, because who doesn't like the Tropicana? Okay, that probably improves our sound slightly. And in this case, I've given a little bit of echo, which is just a delay. Because with this kind of playing, having a little bit of echo go into the amp is really nice. There's no reason that you can't put this after your amp. It won't be as obvious. You can turn up your mix, but this kind of squishes it together, the amplifier. That's nicer. So we have one more thing to add to get us to where we were, and that is drums. Now drums, again, we want to be careful with our volume. Easy to come in and go, ooh, let's turn those right up. No, drop them back in the mix so that they're just supporting the music, and that way you're going to have a lot less problems, because there's nothing worse than having everything kind of hammering away top level in your mix. Feels very unbalanced, and I can't do it because I just never work that way, but you will find that you are running far too hot in your masters, so your masters will already be starting to actually maybe they are. I mean, while it kind of sounds cool, the problem is that you're not hearing your material properly. So keep your levels back where they need to be. And it'll take a little bit for you to get to the point where you can feel what is right. But the rule here is, as I said before, supporting. You've got your music, which is our guitars and our bass. And they are there to support, the guitars are the music, the bass and the drums are there to support that, not to dominate it. So as you see, pull them back. You can, if you've got some kind of quick grouping feature, you can do this. Now I can hear it, it's supporting, it's doing its job. That's all it needs to do. Trying to mix at this point is going to kill you. So it'll cause you a lot of grief and you'll be upset. So drums. Drums, everyone's favourite. But remember, drums are here to support, they're not here to lead. The MT Power Drum Kit 2 is a freebie on the internet. Talked about everywhere. I think there are one or two other things out there in the freebie arena which are similar. Are they the best drums ever? Probably not. Oh, your pedal doesn't work. But they work. I've used them in quite a lot of mixes. Plenty of other people have. They work. That's all you need to know. They work. After that, it becomes down to how you mix them. But don't fuss on that. There is a mixer if you want to change the level of a particular feature. If you're going, well, my hi-hats are too much. But the reality is most of their default stuff does the job just fine. Now you can create a couple of different ways. Most DAWs will work with this. You've got preset MIDI grooves. You can set how many bars. You can set how many bars long you want them to be. Most of the time, that is going to be 3 bars. And you might be thinking, but I work on a 4-bar thing. Yes, drummers work on a 3+1. So 3 bars of boom, ch, and then 1 bar of boom, ch, boom, ch. So this defaults to 3 bars. So if you're going to use your composer here, then you would grab one of them and probably one of them, because they're 1 bar long. And then if we want to have an open hi-hat for the next one, 3 bars. got to learn not to do that. So just don't normally use these "I'll play it for you" devices. From there, if you've built up a composer, you can drag the whole thing into your DAW. You just quite literally pick this up and drag it into your DAW, or if you've dragged it to here and you've got a couple of things, let you drag them around, sort of. There's a little bit of, you can drag those into here, and that there, we see now we've got this all dragged out, which means that we've now got control of these notes inside our DAW. If we wanted to, we could say, look, I don't like that there, I want to move it in this instance to here. So that's why I prefer MIDI rather than using these. It's not meant to really play inside your DAW, you're meant to drag it out like this. So you've got these pre-made patterns which you can drag in. You will be tempted to say, where is the most complex pattern that I can find, and put that in, but then your drums will be overdone. Remember, drums are here to support. So if we go back here, this is realistic playing. If you want to loosen it up, then if you've got some kind of groovifying system inside your DAW, then by all means use it. But just understand, if you apply a shuffle here, you need to apply it to everything. Otherwise, if your drums are shuffling but your bass isn't, and your drums or bass are shuffling but your guitars are not, you're going to have some sense of, well, sucking, because things will become out of time with each other because they don't move together. Remember, we got to move them together. So you're better off keeping everything in rigid time, rigid quantization that stays together, than you are in having things all over the place. If you want to get into having things just be a little bit looser, then you have a DAW that gives you this option, then you can do things like, oh, you can't see it from here, I'm not going to worry. You can do things like loosening your timing on some of your other lines. It's dangerous to loosen the timing of, or to randomize the timing of your drum and bass. You can do it, but if you go more than a tiny amount, it just sounds sloppy, and not good sloppy, I mean bad sloppy. And not even local guys down the pub who drink too much before they go on stage sloppy, I mean just bad. So, but you can loosen up certain things. So like I might well run a slight loosening on, say, my electric guitars, and that will just move them a little bit, little tiny bit. But where you've got notes that overlap, you can find that it causes notes to cut each other off, in which case you've got to shorten your notes so that slop, where it moves the notes around, doesn't cause you issues. That's getting a little advanced, but I know that sooner or later someone's going to be like, and it's like, it's better not to do it until you know how to do it, because the first few times you do it, it's going to break your piece. So that's probably going to be about it. That's almost an hour. This is our verse. The next episodes of our Simple Songwriting series will go through looking at adding a bigger structure. So we'll get an arrangement, which will be a chorus and what have you, to build out into an arrangement, adding some extra sounds to make our arrangement really flow. I'm not sure that I'm going to bother with vocals on this unless I can find somebody who really wants to add vocals to this. But you can see where it's going, working out how to apply vocals neighbours getting noisy, is initially an intuitive process. Later, learning to write harmonies and what have you requires a little bit more thought. But for the moment, once you've got this, you're just naturally going to flow into it. And then we'll look at making a final mix, just as I did last time. Any questions? Ask them down below. If you want to hire me to help you develop your material, down below. Have a chat. You have a good day.